still seeking your approval. And they're burning psychic energy on their performance. And one of the seeds of choking is in having to impress you.
And I would say, I feel like women, typically women, girls, yearn for approval. I think more so than that, I feel like I can say this pretty confidently, is that they want to be loved, they want to be liked. And so this is really very, I think, prevalent on the female side more than we see it on the men, in my opinion. And so recognize this, that it's not healthy for your players in any way. And like Dean says, there has to be safety. They have to feel like no matter what happens from shot to shot, that they're safe with you, that they're safe with their teammates. And that's something that has to be developed over time.
And it has to be real. You can't just say, hey, we're good, because your face will reflect the truth on made and missed shots. And everybody performs, like I say, everybody performs everything better in safety. We used to, in these workshops I used to do with Coach Minshew, we would set up a little board, like a 4x4, 4x6, and people would walk on it. We'd have bowlers walk on it, and then we'd raise the board up a foot, put it on some cement blocks, and watch them change their walking. And that's the distinction between doing something you've done your whole life called walking and then doing it when you feel like you could fall. But when the relationship with the coach is a crash mat, which is no matter what, we're golden, and that's how it is with us. No matter what, you're golden. We're good. We are good. Then you're safe to play. But if I come in and I'm thinking unconsciously, win or tie, love you, that's going to come out somehow. It will come out your pores, if not your words.
And number 2, perfectionism. And I'm going to jump in here because I feel like this is something that I didn't feel like I needed to be ashamed about. I would proudly say that I'm a perfectionist because I didn't recognize that it was particularly harmful. You talked a little bit about yesterday about staying until it was over. Well, that's how I played. You went and you went and you threw it and you threw it and you threw it until you did it right. And I know that's how I was taught as an athlete. I've played sports all my life, and that's just the way I was taught. I thought, Brian will remember this, I keep talking about this quote. I was watching ESPN one morning, and the head coach for women's basketball at UConn, I always mess up his name, Gino Ar. There you go. He had said in one of his interviews that, I have them do the drill, I have them do the task, whatever it is I'm trying to get them to change until they can't do it wrong. And I was like, that is awesome. Over and over and over, do it right all the time. And in our sport, we talk about having to have the ability to repeat. And so this is the way I played. And I would proudly say that I'm a perfectionist. That's cool. It's what I used to think that it's what made the champions because they never let up and they never gave in. But the flip side of that, throwing it to you.
Throwing it to me. The flip side of that is perfectionism is often based in fear. It's the distinction between excellence and perfectionism is where it comes from. And bowling at its highest level, this will sound odd, I ask people sometimes, what's the highest level of human expression? Song, poetry, dance, or bowling? People laugh, and, it's obviously bowling. It's been around since the Egyptians. And the answer is anything we do that's an expression of our spirit. Song isn't higher than bowling, dance isn't higher than bowling, they're the same. It's all gymnastics. Which, as Plato said, there are 2 arts, music and gymnastics. There's expression and there's expression. But perfectionism would say it will kill the life in a being. And when somebody's bowling and you can't tear your eyes off them. You see this, male or female, you see them playing, you just go, oh my gosh, I'm seeing spirit expressed here. Perfectionism is stand up, center of balance, make sure, angle, whatever it is, and it's getting everything right. Perfectionism is a great element of practice. It's an awful element of competition. And it's also sort of an awful element of a coach-athlete relationship. We can have a demand for excellence, which is what can you bring, and we're not doing until you can't do it wrong. I love that. Because so much the development of myelin which is the little sheath around the neurons, and anything you do, it just gets thicker and makes those transmissions faster. But that also happens with emotion. And so if you're driven by perfectionism, which is often fear-based, you're also grooving in, I have fear-based behavior. And I'm not okay if I don't do this okay. And that's what you take to the television show. And so excellence is like, this is where we're going, and this is what we're doing, and this is our standard model for what to execute. But you will not fall from grace for a flawed moment. And what's our next?
Okay.
You might have a great picture. Oh, here we go. Most people think the opposite of faith is doubt. It's not. The opposite of faith is certainty. I will make sure this strikes. I don't want to know what could happen in competition. I want to know I'm going to win. I want to know I'm going to make every spare. I want to know there's a God. Faith, whether it's religion, athletics, whatever it is, says, I am going to put my belief in the fundamental way of being that's going to take me to the next place. Certainty is a lockdown. There's no life in it. Faith is, if I do what you're teaching me and telling me, true surrender, student to coach, is I trust you enough to surrender to what you're offering me. I have faith in you. To only be hired because you can guarantee me a U.S. Open title is ludicrous. Have faith. If I do this, if I execute, over time, my best results are likely. Very. Certainty kills your spirit. Faith in self. Faith in me that'll keep my hands soft. And then better things happen than if I keep it hard. Whatever it is.
So periodically we'll have quotes, some of which, if you love them and they're too long, come and see me afterward to have them. But don't spend a lot of time trying to write it down and just slow you up. But we're both quote people, so hang tight. Being unprepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talked last night a lot about this, and I feel like so often as an athlete, we're very sure I'm good here. I'm good if this happens and this happens, but beyond that, typically I didn't want it to enter my mind that things could go that south, or they could even get that. I could become that successful.
That good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was very comfortable, I think, and I think women that fall this way too, is that they want things to be safe and they want them to be fairly consistent. They're not particularly willing to go too far outside of what they've learned to be true. Like what we've taught them, this is what works. This is what you need to do. And then as we start sort of introducing things that are outside of what they've learned, we start to see a lot of anxiety start to happen.
Can I?
Yes?
Yeah. In all things, and this is with all of us, you have males, females, I guess there's more men in the room. Does it seem that way to you?
Somehow.
If you have an idea that you're a certain level of attractiveness, and this is not to be whatever, the idea that if somebody sees you even as more attractive than you see yourself, it's unsettling and uncomfortable. And most people will undo even that in some way. And the same is true for athletes. They may see themselves as a just made the cut person. This is my, I'm this average. I'm a make the show but not close it out. We talked before when Carolyn had her great year, was it like 7 titles or something in one year? That's pretty good. In that space, and I would argue that Walter Ray has been in that space many times, their idea of what they are is consistent with where they land. I was talking to Walter Ray about his horseshoe titles. He said, I'm very disappointed. I said, what? He six in the known, best in the world 6 times in the known universe. That's not bad. He said, yeah, but I was there 15 times. He was a little bummed he didn't win at least half of them. His chair is consistent with what he thinks he is. But when we first started, Kim was a very, very good bowler, but she didn't have a self-concept around being great. And I would argue that in that great year of Carolyn's, and I do know this, that other players put her in a place, and they moved around her, and she was like, yes, I get to have this chair. It's consistent with what she gets to be. Carolyn, I hope you don't mind me commenting. Is that all right? It was observable.
Now, anyway.
This was observable. You were on TV, all right? I guess I get to comment. You were on TV. I turned it on.
As nice to you as possible. You know my inner secrets.
I think this is one of the inner secrets, which is your results over time will be consistent with what you think you are, and it's a coach's job to not be convinced into the athlete's self-perception. And they will try to talk you into verbally and subtly believing what they believe about themselves. And the results over time will be consistent with what they think they are, not who, but what.
I remember probably, during this time period that he's talking about, I was a very consistent top 10 player. I was comfortable. I made money. I had contracts. I was fine. I wasn't concerned. Susie will remember this too. I just didn't make a lot of telecasts. And so every Wednesday I'd go home to my room and I'd cry about how I was a punk and I couldn't get it done when it mattered. But I was still content because I was making enough to stay out there. No one was questioning at home whether I should continue to bowl. And so it was okay for me. And then Dean came. And we talked a lot about being willing to play, as he calls, on the skinny branches. So I was nice and comfortable, all hugged up against the tree. Wasn't particularly willing to go outside of that and do what was necessary to break into that group. And we see this with teams, we see it with players. You have to encourage your players to believe that they can do more.
And when we talk about being prepared in this match between two of the greatest bowlers in history, Kim missed a 10-pin early.
Never happens on TV.
Leaving that alone too. But a lot of people, actually, you want to know, in some ways, someone asked me, so what's the difference between men and women? And oftentimes with a man, when that's done, it's done. It's win or go home. And oftentimes women are not win or go home right after that moment. If a man looks like he might be shut out, he'll pull a hamstring or act like he did. But the preparation, even in a match or in a tournament, is to say the ugly can happen. Not for the day, it can happen in this frame. And so what? Pull it together, play. And this is exactly the quote that she made actually to me, which is, I know I couldn't make mistakes, and then I made one, and then I had to rewrite my theory of the universe, which is maybe I'll get another opportunity. I better keep bowling. And it's being ready for a sudden gust of wind and going, that could happen. Or, as we talked about earlier, there could be frosting in the approaches, or 6-pound balls could have gone like this. And we're ready for all of it. But even more, and the last thing I'll say about this, as we started here, was the preparation to be great unnerves people. And part of choking is when people go beyond their self-concept. And so some of the visualization that we do is not just how to feel and what your ball path is. The visualization is, what does it feel like to be great? And what does it feel like to allow yourself to be more than you have been? Visualization can be at a spiritual level, which is the soul of what you are is more than what you think it has been. Being prepared for not just the good, the phenomenal. So you can be national champion or city champion or Queen's champion or whatever. Do that? All right.
Okay.
All right.
Just distractions, voices inside your head and noises outside. Similar a little bit to what we were just talking about. Whether it is parents, which is, as we look at sort of the list of the things that we have concerns about in coaching, young athletes, girls, boys, it doesn't matter. Parents are there, they're involved, they're invested in the success, sometimes too invested, and they can become a distraction. So if you don't get your athletes prepared for what might potentially happen, because these are, I feel like, really pretty connected, this slide and the one previous.
Okay. Bottom line is this. The most important thing is to focus on the most important thing. And that's a training skill. And there were times, particularly raucous environments, I remember saying to Kim, it's just you and I. You're going to play ball, and we would just stay connected, like it's just us. And if you're with a team, it doesn't matter who's outside of your team. It's just us. And as Coach Borden was saying, even to the point, what's the most important thing? If it's thumb out, it's thumb out. That's it. Elbow in, it's elbow in. That's it. We're good to go here. Free to play. That's it. And remember this. I was at a tournament. I was watching some things, and there was this elderly African-American woman. She had to be in her 80s. And the way she said this just stuck with me. She said, look at these players being all upset about the noises around them. She goes, that to me is a sign of a weak mind. And I went, you can bill me for this moment now. It's the training. What is the most important thing in this moment? To not have to, not to have it happen a certain way. And if you have a thought that you don't care for those of you who saw the movie A Beautiful Mind, the guy has schizophrenia and he's walking around and these characters start bouncing around with him, other characters in his life. It's a true story. And what his training with his psychologist or psychiatrist was to learn to say, you guys are here, and not sort of nod his head and smile and go, but I'm teaching class now. What you try to push away pushes back harder. And a lot of times, we work with players, work with women, they want that playing environment, everything has to be just so. It's like, no, what if you just nodded your head, didn't try to make it go away, and say, I see you, whether it's a thought or whether it's an external thing, but it's just us. Let's go back and play.
I have to jump in here too,
Please.
because back to the whole 10-10 issue that I have on television, and at one point I was intending to lose something. It was tragic in my role. It's like, oh, I don't ever want that to happen, and it happened. And so for years, I did this at least once. I would spend my whole practice before the TV show shooting 10 pins. I would not have missed maybe one the whole week, but I would be completely focused on that. And I remember I made the show, it was a few years back, and I made the Queens, and I called them, I'm like, I just don't want this to happen. It's like my biggest fear every time that I'm going to wreck it, and I'm going to blow it for this title, and I'm going to make this mistake. And I go, every time I hear it kind of creeping up on me, don't miss the 10-10, and I try to block it, and it's exactly that. I kept trying to block that one thing that I didn't want to hear or to have happen. And Dean said to me, he goes, just acknowledge it and let it go. And it was a whole different, it felt entirely different. I felt no longer sort of trapped where I would say, don't come, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, like, stay away. And I just accepted that, yeah, I hear it, I see it, I'm fine, I can get this. And I was free to just play and not be afraid of the consequences, not be afraid of what anybody was going to think about it. I just played.
If you see a thought that you don't care for, you go, I see you. I think I'll stay down at the line. The most important thing is to just think about the most important thing. And then you choose what that is. Well, I sort of like this one, related a lot. Which is all fear is based on past or future thinking. There's almost never something in that moment that's bad. It's only what if, what if. And bowlers ask themselves the wrong question. What if I tug it? And your brain says, tug it. In fact, it'll say, what the heck? I'll show you what'll happen. All right? But in that moment, and you can only breathe in this moment, and every pre-shot routine should have a breath as part of it, from my point of view, because it brings you there. The thought of doing it says, I have to be here in this moment, and breathing's the start. And women, because of their, I think there's some gender differences in terms of short-term and long-term gratification. I think women are better at projecting consequences. But they can also project negative consequences. And the trick is to ask the right question, which is, what do I need to do here? What am I up to? Are we good? Yes. If I can't emphasize it enough, and if we weren't clear enough about it 100 times, the strength of our, I feel like our success, your success, but I mean us as a working relationship was the relationship. It wasn't all the knowledge I could download from all the books I'd read. You guys are fountains of that. Lots of gold coaches and gold candidates and others there will be. And if it were enough to disseminate information, the show would be over. But it can only be, I think, fully absorbed safely in the context of a relationship. And it allows you to be present instead of worried about what somebody's thinking.
Getting psyched out before the game. Any toes
Yes, sorry. Didn't mean to imply.
I don't remember what we talked about last night on this slide, so I'm going to go forward to the moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it. So once you, they're all sort of, again, interconnected to me. If you don't believe that you can have this success ahead of time, if you haven't envisioned it, it can't happen.
In that given year, I really did this I heard this verbalized. Okay, 5 shots, I'm talking about the year in the women's tour. Okay, so we're in Detroit, there's 5 spots on the show, Carolyn's got 1, that leaves 4. I'm like, do you realize that you guys haven't bowled yet? I'm sorry to bust this, but it was an amazing phenomenon. And so she faced people in match play, and they were done before it was done. Now she could play flat out and still win the old-fashioned way by playing well. But I talked to a number of players who were done before it was done. And at the college level, all this is, now we're at national, now we're facing some of these, Godzillas, now, Wichita, Robert Morris, Weber, that. And it's done before it's done. As if it is written ahead of time. And in players' minds, as we said, results will be consistent with what they think they are. And your job as a coach with the women you work with is to see them as they really are, which is here, as opposed to what they fear they are often, which is here. The fear is that they're very good, when you can see great.
When I was at Delaware, I had, I was only there 2 years. So my first year, I didn't really have an opportunity to do much recruiting. The second year, I got what I got. Again, I had kids that were interested in, I think, coming to the program. Really, maybe they knew me from Team USA. Most of these kids weren't watching television when I was bowling on TV, so they were not coming because they knew that I was a successful player. I think they knew me more from my Team USA experiences. But I think the success that I had that second year was very much around getting them to understand that it was, why not us? No one else wanted the kids that I had. They didn't have offers from other schools. They weren't kids that had won anything before. And we all have students like this, and you guys all have players in your programs that are like this. But getting them to believe that, why isn't this available for them? That we can't figure out who's going to be on the medal stand. We don't want to buy into that. You have to believe and get your kids to believe that they're just as deserving of that spot as anyone else. And once they bought into that, once they believe that if we outworked, because knowing what's necessary is important as well, but if we outworked what these other teams and countries were doing, then we could find ourselves there, and I believe that we did.
And no one will close a deal that they don't think they deserve. And by the time your women get to you, whether it's 7, 17, 27, or 77, they will already have an idea of what they think they deserve. And if they doubt what's possible, show's over. And again, it'll be the strength of your relationship, but not cheerleading. What you have in terms of connecting, seeing, and holding, it has to be real. I don't believe that a lie will hold up over time anywhere. You have to really get it, and then they'll draft off you when they forget.
Playing not to lose instead of playing to win. You have different versions of this that you talked about.
I do, and I think we started off this way, which was you were a successful, making money player who was playing not to lose. And one of the things we do sometimes with the colleges that we work with, but with your players, the women that you're working with, whether it's a shot, whether it's a practice, whether it's a tournament, if you have these 4 strata, these 4 categories called playing to win, playing not to lose, just playing or not playing, you could assign a numerical value to that. 4, 3, 2, 1. Playing to win. To really play is to be vulnerable, to be exposed, and to be open. And guys can come out and they have sort of the luxury of going, oh, I'm the big dog or whatever it is, and they can just show that part of their personality, and it might be comfortable for them to be, they can go Sean Rash on the thing, right? No cut on him. I'm saying it's an aspect of himself he's comfortable showing. Bam, I'm out here. But to play freely as a woman is to be exposed and to be vulnerable. And there's some gender differences in terms of what it means to be exposed and vulnerable. Maybe we play like this, as long as we're doing a workshop. First name's what again?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. Can we play a little bit? All right. Check something out here. All right. Hop on up. Hop on up. Make sure the table's stable. What's your first name's what? Tony. Tony, make sure Jennifer's safe here. Yeah, try not to die because it plays badly on the whole thing. All right, take a look around, Jennifer. All right. So from Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Oh, check your hair out. It's Jersey. All right.
That is different.
Now, to get clear, I want you to look around. You know some of these people, or are they mostly new to you?
I know some of them.
Okay. What are you experiencing right now? Like, honestly, not being cool, but what's going on?
Hot up here.
What else? Not being cool. Like, what are you experiencing?
It's a little weird.
It is weird. What are you experiencing? Comfortable, uncomfortable, nervous,
Well,
open?
nervous, I don't like standing on tables.
All right. What would you be nervous about? For reals. I know it's not about falling. You're how old?
20.
25, standing roughly 23 years?
No more than that.
So, no, be conservative. We'll say you've been standing 23 years. And this is not to butter you up, you actually do it pretty well. All right? I think you're actually standing competently. So look around. You are the center right now. What are you experiencing? For real? Yes.
I don't know. All eyes are on me. It's a little weird. I don't like that.
You don't like that? Freaks you out a little bit. Thanks for being honest. I actually really thank you for being honest. Any other feelings that you're aware of? Any other thoughts you're aware of? All right. Look again. All right. If I take Del Warren and put him up there, he's going to say, not only would he hit the ceiling, he'd say, do I have to get down already? All right? But we're asking her to do something she's very competent at, which is standing. She's not moving, she doesn't have a ball in her hand, she doesn't have to shoot a corner pin spare, and it's already uncomfortable, for objectively speaking. If I wanted to ask her some questions that were a little more, just not real personal, she's going to have a level of exposure. I'm going to ask you something that's a little touchy. Do you mind taking your jacket off? All right, I'm going to ask that too. Now, kind of funky, I'm asking this woman to take her jacket off. As odd as it sounds, at a level of consciousness, there's a gender issue here, too. Because I'm a guy asking her to take an article of clothing off. If I'm her coach, believe it or not, this stuff comes into play at some level, almost never conscious. And if I were working with her, and we're going to change your hand position a little bit, I'm not going to touch you. If I just grab her hand, now I got another male-female dynamic going. Right? So I'm never going to do that unless, can I touch your forearm okay? Just right there, that's the only place I'm going to do it. I wouldn't do it any differently if she had a bowling ball in her hand. And because overwhelmingly, we have like 94 men and 6 women in the room, which tells me that when we're talking about coaching women, it doesn't matter if you go, I'm 70 years old, what could possibly exist here? It exists. And levels of vulnerability, and if I'm going to ask you to hang out and just go, I want you to stay down, execute, and be free, go back to my original point, you are going to be maximally, if that's a word, vulnerable. Wide open. Playing not to lose is to be perfect and to execute properly and to do it just right. Playing to win says, watch this, you'll know who I am after this shot. You'll know what I am. But you won't be free to do it unless you're free and safe with your coach, which is show me what you got, make or miss, we're still cool. I'm so sorry because I went so fast. First name again. Jennifer. So, hang on for a second, take a breath. No, really, just take a breath. It's not going to be about them for a second. It is about us. I'm not going to ask you to do anything but stand, for real. And I'm not going to touch your arm, I'm not going to do a thing. Without looking, your relationship with this man is what?
It's my dad.
That's your